Hello, bravs. We're back with Shakespeare's Sweetheart, a 1905 historical novel by Sara Sterling on the courtship, marriage, and aftermath of William Shakespeare's marriage to Anne Hathaway. We shall resume with chapter 14. As you shall see, this finely illustrated book. Look upon this picture, and on this. What? Look upon this picture, and on this. All right, whatever that means. At the end of a beautiful summer afternoon, 2 months later, I sat by the window in Will's lodgings, gazing out at the quiet street beyond. Will lay asleep upon the bed, pale, wasted, yet more like his former self than he had been for many weeks. The room was very still, and my thoughts were busy as I looked dreamily at the narrow, deserted street, and the soaring spire of St. Helens, visible far above the many roofs. The ordinary peaceful scene upon which my bodily eyes rested was assuredly in contrast to the tumultuous ones that my spirit's vision beheld. First I recalled the end of that dreadful duel upon the stage. I remembered how, at length, thanks to a Master Burbage's cool head and wise directions, a doctor had been secured and Will's wound cared for. Then Master Johnson had dismissed the audience, making light of the accident, although his kindly heart was full of anxiety. When he returned to Will's side, however, he met good news. The doctor had pronounced the hurt serious, but not mortal, and had said that with careful nursing he would be himself again within a few months. Count William at once cried out that his house should be his friend's shelter, but much to my relief the doctor shook his head. Strange surroundings might aggravate his illness. His own lodgings would be more favorable to his speedy recovery. So at length it was settled that Will should be removed to his room in the precinct of St. Helens, and that I should be his nurse. I was pale and quiet by this time, not knowing how far I had betrayed my secret in my first outburst of alarm and agony. In response to Count William's inquiry whether I would act as nurse, I nodded assent, and forthwith Will was laid upon a hastily devised stretcher. And several of the actors took it up, ready to carry to his lodgings. As they did so, Burbage glanced around him. "Marlowe," he said as he lifted his share of the burden, "Marlowe has disappeared." Count William set his teeth with an ugly look. "Ay," he answered, "in the turmoil he hath made good his escape. I will find him, fear not. There is a law against dueling. He shall feel its weight." The Count's words aroused me from my lethargy. "Find also, then, Robin Green and Jack Falstaff," I said, speaking in a forced, toneless voice. "Find also Robin Green and Jack Falstaff." He looked at me in amazement. "Why, lad?" he said gently. "Why dost thou say so?" I shook my head and passed my hand across my brow with a bewildered gesture. "I cannot tell thee now," I said. "Somehow the words will not come. But do as I beg, prithee, Count William. Find also Robin Green and Jack Falstaff." And with that the sentence died upon my lips. As a strange thing happened, the actors had borne their burden carefully and tenderly as far as the entrance to the street. There they set the stretcher down in order to unbar the door. The movement perhaps caused Will to regain his consciousness. At any rate, he stirred. Noticing this, instantly I rushed to his side and saw that his eyes were open. They met mine with a look of entire, delighted recognition. Then, in a weak, faraway voice, he breathed my name. "Nan," he said softly, tenderly as if for me alone, and then again, more faintly, "Nan, sweetheart." And then he sighed, his eyes closed, and he relapsed into unconsciousness once more. I had much ado to control myself. Methinks I had cared little then, had my identity been instantly discovered. Master Burbage glanced at Master Johnson significantly. I remembered that he knew of my existence, probably of Will's marriage. Count William had not heard the words. Naught was said, however, and without further delay we started on our own slow journey to Will's lodgings. And then, after that terrible afternoon, for 2 brief months, my love was all mine again. My love, though faithless to me, he was always and forever my own and only love, the light of my eyes, The glory of my life was restored to me for a brief space. It was enough. I rejoiced that I had come to London. When he was himself again, the Countess would claim him. But now he was mine, all mine. In his delirium, he had never mentioned either my name or hers. His talk was all of the theatres and plays and parts. Not once did any Stratford name or place cross his lips. Of Count William and of the various actors he talked freely, although in rambling fashion he seemed to recognize me as my assumed self and called me Cesario. This relieved me much, for I did not choose that he should know me yet. Lately, however, his delirium had ceased, and as he began to gain strength he had said little. Today, for the first time, he had shown a desire to talk at length, but I had discouraged him, as the doctor bade me. Naught had been heard of Green or Falstaff since that day when Will was wounded. When I had grown calmer, I had told Count William my reasons for suspecting them, and he had deemed them good. Despite constant searching, however, he had so far been unsuccessful. This was the more remarkable because of Falstaff's unusual appearance. We concluded at length that both must have left the city. Marlowe, with ready and repentant nobility, had come to court Count William and given himself up when he had recovered from his drunken brawl and had learned of Will's condition. Count William had promptly caused his imprisonment, and he was still a captive so far as I knew. I could not help regretting this, for Marlowe had excellent and generous qualities, despite his failings, and in this case I felt that his weaknesses had made him merely the tool of others. As usual, the least guilty suffered, while the really culpable... What? Well, the really culpable, and that's... All right. I drew my brows together in a little frown of perplexity as I thought this, staring out at the placid sky, and suddenly I was startled by a voice from the bed. "What's the problem, Cesario? Sooth, there are many in this weary coil of our mortal life." I heard an impatient sigh. "Come hither and talk to me, lad," he smiled teasingly. "Truly, thou must get that ugly frown from thy face, or no sweet woman wilt thou ever play again. Thou lookest now more like Kit Marlowe's Tamburlaine." I smiled and shook my head as I came obediently and sat beside him. "Nay," I said somewhat rashly, "no play of Marlowe's will I ever act in, nor of Robin Green's neither." And then I paused rather abruptly, for I feared my words were imprudent. He looked at me curiously. "Whence this rage against Kit and Robin?" "Ah, I think I know. Help my memory, Cesario." "'Twas Kit wounded me, was not?" He spoke slowly, falteringly, as if tormented by a half-formed recollection. I took quick counsel with myself. Then I decided that uncertainty would be worse for him than to know all. So forthwith I began and told him everything with which my thoughts had just been busy. Of the real duel that had replaced the mock one, of the share that I thought Green and Falstaff had played in it, and of how Marlowe had given himself up and now lay in prison by Count William's command. He started when I said this. "Nay," he said with energy, "that is ill done of Count William. Marlowe, too, could have eluded justice. Instead, he yielded himself up, and should have met with mercy. Well, the remedy will come soon. I will speak with Count William. The London stage needs Marlowe. Will broke off an instant and lay gazing with bright, unseeing eyes at the blue sky beyond the window, which had now begun to darken into twilight. "He writes wondrous plays," he continued at length quietly. "Thou'st been at Paul's, lad, when the organ is pealing forth, and when the music rolls in mighty majestic waves towards heaven. E'en such is Marlowe's verse that I have not yet equalled. Perhaps never shall." He paused, then continued in a lighter tone. "As for Robin Green, he is a mere boy, and no doubt is frightened to death now at the result of his plot. He, too, must be spared. But Jack Falstaff..." His tone grew stern. "Jack Falstaff is a man and should have known better. Besides, Robin Green was my declared enemy. Jack, my pretended friend." He paused again for a moment, then his brows contracted, as if at some puzzling memory. "The miniature," he said, looking at me. "That miniature. Hast it still?" I started as if stung. He had been speaking of mercy to all who had injured him, and now for me. whose heart lay beneath his feet. He had naught but cruelty, unconscious, yet most bitter. I said in a low voice, and turned away my face from him. The afternoon had passed now, and the sky had darkened into night. The outline of the houses was misty. Hath she, he paused an instant, hath she ever been here? Nay, I said shortly, then added unwillingly, but I have heard Count William say that she hath inquired oft as to thy well-being. He was silent. I had my head turned from him and could not see his face. At length he sighed. Well, the miniature, he said, let's see it, lad. Little did I deem, when I sent thee for it, that 'twould be so long before mine eyes beheld it. Obediently I drew it forth from the place in my bosom where it had rested many weeks. Little had I thought, either, that its hated presence would be near me for so long. It was still upon the chain which had held it when she gave it me. I freed it from my neck and laid the porcelain trifle in his hand. A light, he said. Bring hither a candle, Cesario. I obeyed. He lifted the miniature feebly and held it so that he could gaze at it. Thus he lay long, but at last he broke silence. A fair face, Cesario, he said, a fair face. It's the mirror of as fair a soul. He spoke as if to himself rather than to me, but I answered. I know not, I said, then added desperately, Count William deems it so. A spasm of pain crossed his face. I know, he answered gently, and again gazed reflectively at the painted bit of porcelain. The eyes, insolent yet dreamy, looked back at him. The lustreless raven hair lay heavy over the white brow. The countenance was mocking, elusive as in life. A fair face, he said again musingly. Methinks I have never seen a fairer. I blew out the candle with a quick breath and answered his words on impulse. Why I spoke as I did, I know not. Methinks the pent-up jealousy and anguish of months suddenly burst the bounds so sternly set before them. Thou didst deem otherwise once, I said, and gazed out into the night with tragic eyes. The world was dark now, very dark. Even so, the sun of my life had set. Sorry, Camaro just drove by. Vintage one at that. The world was dark now, very dark. Even so, the sun of my life had set, and soon the night of death and darkness would encompass me. The river lay near, flowing swiftly to the sea. It bore many things upon its bosom. What if I entrusted to its kindly care a broken heart, a weary body? Will started at my words. I could feel his eyes upon me. What meanest thou? He said imperiously. What meanest thou? I did not turn from the window. The face of the Countess is fair indeed, I said. Dusky as night is her hair, as a night without stars. Her eyes, fathomless wells of truth, of falsehood, who shall read them? Aye, she is fair, but once thou didst find charm, master, in a different face. I heard the quick turn of his body in the bed behind me, his fast, irregular breathing, but he did not speak. 'Twas a face, I went on, a face sorrowful, yet fair at least, so didst thou call it once. Her eyes were very dark and sad, until thou didst come into her life. Then they grew joyous for a while. I wonder if they be sad now. Her hair was golden. He interrupted me with a sharp cry. Where didst thou learn all this? He queried. I went on, unheeding the appeal in his voice. Men say she went mad for love, poor fool. 'Tis woman's way. What matter? Thou hast a countess now. Again he cried out in a way that startled me, imperious, bewildered. How knowest thou this? How knowest thou? But I was looking out into the night, and I did not turn. Thus she sang, I said, 'tis passing sad, her story. I had it from a Stratford lad. I turned now and looked at him. The room was too dark for us to see each other, but I felt his eyes striving to search my face. He had risen into a half-sitting position. He sank back now with a deep, long-drawn sigh. Thou knowest my story in some strange way, he said in a low, trembling voice. Has she written in these months? Nay, I answered truthfully. Can aught be wrong? He murmured. Thou knowest Stratford, then, lad. Light the candles and tell me more. As I obeyed the first part of his command, wondering how I could evade the second, a shadow fell across the threshold. Well, Prince of Poets, exclaimed a rich, lazy voice that we both knew well, how goes the world with thee? She swept a magnificent curtsy and came forward into the light. It was the Countess, fair and stately, her crimson robe sweeping the floor, her velvet cloak half falling from her shoulders. For an instant she stood thus, then Will spoke in a voice curiously suppressed. "Be seated, Countess," he said. "Cesario, fetch hither a chair." He paused an instant, as I obeyed him, glancing from the Countess's face to mine with evident indecision. Then, in a curiously apologetic tone, he continued, "St. Helens is near. Go thither, Cesario, and wait upon the church steps until I send for thee." I don't remember the ending of this book, but now I'm getting very curious, bruv. All right, goodbye.